Well, good morning, everyone. We are so glad that you are with us today. My name is Curtis Schroeder. If we haven't had a chance to meet, I lead our research and insight function here at Vericent. And you're going to get a chance to hear from and get to know our lovely panelists today who are going to share some great insights with all of you. And we're going to have a chance at the end for you to share your voice and ask some questions as well. So be preparing and thinking about what questions that you have as we get into some of these topics. But something that I have always loved about SPM and about this space and about working with and getting to know each of you is that this world of SPM that we play in sits at the intersection of so many important and strategic parts of our organizations. When you think about how quotas get set, how territories get designed, how compensation gets implemented. These are some of the ways that really drive the engine of our entire organization. But this may be your experience. My guess is maybe what drew you to this room and this conversation today is that a lot of that work across those different functions is often very disconnected from one another. The team that's building the sales planning functions, those that are running and leading compensation, finance, all the groups that really do need to be working together and eventually find ways to stitch these conversations together with spit and duct tape at times, right? Those live in different parts of our organizations. They follow different processes. There's different standards and KPIs and even just the personality and the cultural differences between those teams. It can create a lot of friction in the way that we manage. But we all know that there is a nirvana that we're working towards where those functions work their best when they are working together and when they are working hand in hand. And so we're going to have a chance today to hear from a couple representatives from companies that have figured this out. And they've figured it out in some different ways, too. It's not a one-size-fit-all or a single way to think about this or do this. But they'll give you some really great examples of how they've understood that this challenge exists, but started to build it and implement it and feel different about what it's producing and the effectiveness of it in their own organization. So again, my name is Curtis Schroeder. We're going to introduce you to Paula and to Terry today, but why don't you guys start by just sharing a little bit about who you are, introduce yourselves, your function, and what you do and how we got to this world and this place for this conversation today.
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Terry Sember. I work at Ingram Micro. I'm a leader on the Global Sales Excellence team. I've been on that team for 5 years. We are, I guess, maybe 3.5 years into our Vericent journey. And what we're responsible for doing is bringing governance and standardization across the global footprint. So we work with currently 14 different countries where we have Ingram installed, and we've got 14 more to go, but we've got about 2,500 payees on the system currently. And so that's why I'm here to talk about that process of how we went from no one to 14 countries.
Awesome. And Paula.
So my name is Paula Lerche. I'm the sales enablement lead for Bayer Crop Science Division. I've been working in this space for quite some time, like more or less 10-ish years, part in our team in LATAM and now from the enterprise. And basically what I do is kind of take care of the sales planning, execution, and incentive compensation. So it's kind of an end-to-end sales process. So we just kind of make sure that we ask our customer-facing squads, that's how we call our sales teams, to do things, and I take care of how we are enabling them and how we are rewarding them. And actually, we have been partnering with Vericent for the last 4 years. We have operations in more than 110 countries. So we run comms for all those countries and regions, different go-to-markets, and around 7,000 payees, and still growing. So yeah, happy to be here.
Well, we are happy to have you both, so thanks for taking the time. We're going to learn a lot from today. Paula, actually, I'm going to start with you on this next question. We've talked a lot. It's easy to get focused on where we're at today and the great things that you're still working towards and the successes of where you're at. But let's start by maybe backing up the 3 or 4 years and looking at what Bayer was like 3 or 4 years ago. And what were some of the symptoms about the disconnection between some of the processes that now you lead and oversee and help create continuity between? Why don't you start us with there?
So we started kind of our journey back in 2020 when we started kind of building this foundation in which we wanted to make sure that we are having this kind of standardized and harmonized way of compensating our teams across regions, understanding that we will need particularities and configurations by countries, but we want to make sure that we had an overall enterprise strategy. But then, as we move forward, we we were not at exactly the right spot we envisioned, and that was having compensation as the center of our commercial strategy. So we wanted to move from output to kind of just being an output to be part of the table in decision making. So some of the symptoms that were kind of restraining ourselves to achieve that was lack of the same understanding across the different kind of areas of the company, competing priorities, different messaging. Kind of we were saying one things from the commercial side to the field, but then finance was kind of striving for a different thing, how we have a healthy P&L, not just kind of bringing volume. So there was a lot of complexities. And I think that was kind of the first moment we said and how moment, hey, we need to bring everybody to the room. And I think that's how it started.
Well, and what I love about that too is the compensation at the center, that piece. I mean, so often it gets relegated to feeling more operational and output driven, like you mentioned, but we all know it because we're sitting in this room and live this every day, that it really is the central part of how we connect the strategy of our organization to the execution of the squads that you mentioned, right? Those customer facing roles. So Terry, you mentioned that there were you're kind of 14 countries in, 14 countries to go. At one point you said you're working towards the United States of Ingram, and something about that, right? Where they're kind of like operating, in their own way today, but how do we kind of bring those pieces together? So maybe tell us a little bit more about the journey and where you started from before it's kind of moving to this broader global lens that you're expanding out.
Yeah, absolutely. So when, I guess it was probably about 5 years ago, the leadership team recognized that we didn't have standardization or governance that was consistent across all the different states of Ingram. And so they said we need to do something about that. So they started to understand, well, how would we go about doing that? Well, we need to have a standardized platform as a driver towards the outcome that we want, which is that, everyone having similar plans, similar metrics, components, all of those things, because as you looked across the landscape, it was all very different, and it all didn't report, the data wasn't coming up consistently, so we really didn't know what was happening from an executive leadership standpoint, what was happening in the countries. We couldn't see any of that kind of stuff. So that's where we started down the selection process of getting Vericent. And what we decided to do was we would pilot it with a few countries, and within those countries we did it very specifically with a specific pilot group of cloud associates, is what we would call them. So they were the sales folks on the team were selling the cloud SaaS services, as opposed to some of the other things that Ingram sells, which are hardware and servers and all of those kind of things. And we just really segmented out very small, pilot it, get the buy-in, and get things rolling, and then expand from there. And that's what we've been able to do. But as we went through that process, it was amazing to me, as we uncovered those layers of how distinctly different and autonomous each of the countries were operating. The differences from country to country to country, the variances, and the lack of sharing of any kind of best practices between them, it was amazing to us. And that's really one of the more powerful things that we've come across as we went down this and started expanding, is being able to bring some of those things across that. But at the time, we were all operating, all the countries are operating kind of independently under the umbrella of Ingram, but they were all kind of unique and distinct. We've now been able to start getting some of that governance and standardization and accountability in the system.
I'm hearing this piece, it's reminding me of some of our conversations around this. And as a software vendor, it's music to your ears where you're like, oh, technology was really the leading driver of this, and maybe the sales teams that are in the room, I'll just say, mute your ears for a second. But technology can be an important part of this, and I absolutely believe that with all my whole heart. But this is really, it's a change management process that has to be a part of this too. Sorry, we were going to say something.
So we always started the process with meeting with the country leaders and explaining to them what the objectives were and understanding what the pain points that they were having and how we could help with those. We didn't lead with the technology, we led with listening, and then said, okay, these pain points you have, we can help with. And the starting point to helping with that is, let's get you into this platform so that we can see what we've got, start standardizing, and create some efficiencies. both for their admins, for their sales managers, as well as the executive leadership. But it starts with that conversation at the outset.
And I can reinforce kind of that piece it's super critical, kind of the change management piece. Yeah. And we had a very similar approach in kind of really co-creating with the regions because, again, there were multiple go-to-market strategies. So we didn't have one size fits all, and we understood that very quickly. And when you have that kind of connection and engagement and accountability, kind of the change process moves super, super fast from the strategy or the design of the comp and also the execution in the tool, which give us also the possibility to have all these analytics and measure performance, which in the end is what we want to do, kind of to retrofeed that kind of positive cycle.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So you can't just layer technology on bad process and expect it to be the silver bullet that fixes it, right?
Correct.
One thing that I remember from our conversation too, Terry, you kind of talked, it'd be easy to say in the United States of Ingram, we just assign a president and the president kind of rolls out the directives and everything, but you really talked about a process where you brought people along in that. So can you tell us a little bit more about how the shift started and how you brought your teams through that process?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we would start with the country leadership because you have to get their okay, but then we'd ask them to designate some stakeholders on the different teams. So we'd have a local team that was helping us drive this change management. So we'd have someone from HR, someone from finance, sales ops, sales leadership, compensation, whatever was appropriate for that country. And that was, we saw variances there as well, right? In one country, the finance person's doing the work. In another country, an HR person's doing it. Sometimes it's a sales manager doing it. So we didn't go in with any preconceived notions of the right people. You tell us who the right people are for you. And then we would get together and we'd have those conversations. And part of change management for us is that trust factor, right? So we always wanted to understand what they were doing today, and we didn't change everything at once, right? We looked at the spots where we thought we could, and the things we could leave alone for now, we did, right? So we focused, we participate in all the platforms, right? So we have sales planning, we have ICM, we have ELT, we use the sales portal, we use them all the tools. But we didn't go in and say, you have to use all of these right now. We said, okay, let's see where the pain points are that you have and how we can solve for those and make sure they understood where we wanted to go. But we started with ICM, and we spent a lot of time getting people up and running in ICM with the sales plans they have, the compensation measures, the quota planning process that they have today. Yes, you have a spreadsheet, we can upload that right in. You don't have to change your process. We can just incorporate that right in. And that made everyone kind of take that breath, right? Everybody kind of relaxes who you're working with and say, oh, you're not just coming in here to tell us exactly what we have to do and replace everything we do. We made it much more comfortable for them to have conversations. We're listening to them. And through that process is where we started to build that trust. Yeah, for sure.
Super important. And in our conversation as well, I know you talked about that this is reflecting a cultural dynamic at Ingram as well, that's a piece of this. And that's why that process and that way of going about it worked. But one of the reasons why we brought Paula into this as well was that their organization took an entirely different approach. So could you maybe share a little bit about how your approach differs from Terry and Ingram Micro?
So I think, we were very aggressive. So we were very aggressive in the way we did things. So the good thing is that we were already kind of 4 years into ICM. So we had that as a backbone for the change that was coming, so that was super cool. And basically, we had a major transformation within Bayer, and we have now a more kind of flat, lean organization, and we are kind of really empowering teams to kind of drive their growth. And we needed kind of to at least comms for sales team to kind of show that we were kind of going into that direction. So we assemble, again, a cross-functional regional teams, finance, HR, and commercial, and we totally redesigned our compensation. Based on what we had as a framework, so we had already that kind of standardization and harmonization, but we took some decisions, so some decisions. So we focused on eligibility. So we brought to the incentive, what we call customer team incentive, product supply, customer service, and finance. So now everybody has skin in the game. Nobody can say, hey, sales, you're not delivering, or hey, finance, you're putting me restrictions. Now everybody has skin in the game. So we had to kind of really rethink about how that eligibility process needs to work, because also it has to be transparent and fair for everybody. So, and each country has a different setup of exactly which roles are bringing into this, because 2025 was our first year kind of driving this. We had pilots in 2024, but then we scale in that. The second big piece is we're not having individual targets anymore. So we have team targets, which also kind of help us, number one, have this dynamic resource flow, so deploying different people where the opportunity is and not kind of messing around with the conversation about my target. But I had 1,000 and now I have 2,000. So we are moving resource fluidly, and compensations are helping also with that. So that was kind of a major change. We also bring more performance analytics. So we are bringing a lot of information that commercials didn't knew before, and it was like, oh, this kind of region is overperforming. What is happening there?
Yeah.
What they're doing differently? Are our targets healthy or not? It's kind of, or we are just having really kind of super users and committed people in that specific region. So we were able to kind of really use analytics in order to design our compensation. So we went basically from the output or how we reward this into how we design this. And I think that was a major shift for us.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I hope you are starting to see yourself in some area of the spectrum. You may be a little more Team Paula or a little bit more Team Terry here, right? But that was the goal of the conversation, is hopefully to hope you see your organization and see where you are today, maybe where they were a few years ago, and start to see the stories emerge. And so, Terry, let's talk a little bit more about that piece. You at one point you talked about this moment of self-discovery in Australia. Maybe we all need a moment of self-discovery in Australia. But I'm going to talk to Nick about that. We're going to go do that out, like to go self-discovery later. But the process that you walked through there in particular, as you're rolling this out and kind of bringing them along in the process, maybe tell us more about how that worked out and how that helped accelerate then other countries after that.
Yeah. So one of the pilot countries we had was Australia, and they were very good and nice and friendly to work with, but they were very confident in the process that they had, that it was working very well. And we said, great, that's fine. So we deployed them in Vericent, and we run parallel for a quarter, and we compare the results. And we do this reconciliation process, and my boss always liked to say it's a judgment-free zone. There's no judgment. We're just looking at the data. That's all we're doing, right? And so we started looking at the data, and wow, there's all these variances between what Vericent's calculating and what they're calculating. And we said, okay, well, let's just dig into them, see what it shows. Let's figure out why they're different. And as we went through that process, they had what I call an aha moment, where they realized 80% of the things that were incorrect were on their side. Their process was not, because it was very manual, spreadsheets, susceptible to, I forgot to do that one step. Oh, that's why this is off by this much. Oh, Vericent doesn't forget that, because it's automated and it happens the same every time. And so as their team recognized that, you could see their mind shift went, oh, this is really much better. And this is more accurate, and they were fully bought in at that point, and we couldn't go fast enough with them at this point after that, and so we let them kind of come to that. We knew, right? We kind of expected that to be the result, but we didn't hit them over the head with it. We said let them come to it themselves, and then they're our biggest advocates, right? They'll talk to any other country that we're talking with about the process, the experience. They're great advocates for us inside Ingram now, because they've gone through that process. So yeah, that was part of our.
So important and so much part of your culture too, to
Yes,
help build
correct.
that piece out.
Yep.
And as I think about a commonality, the thread that I'm hearing between the two of these is the importance of data, the use of data. You even talked about some of the countries that are using that to expand their thinking, just be able to see between markets, and right, like to talk about how that there's the self-discovery. I say that like kind of tongue in cheek, but it truly is a little bit of that process, as the data can tell us interesting things, and when you bring it in the right way, it can be additive and helpful in how we explain and how we get people to change their minds and change their opinions, and almost remove some of the emotion out of that process. Was that your experience then with that too?
Yes, 100%, and it kind of led us to really put some efforts in understanding our target setting process, and that lead to the discovery of, okay, it's not the target setting process only, it's our forecasting process. So it's like, that's kind of the cool thing, I think, about my job
Yeah.
is that it's not only comps, it's kind of sales enablement. And it's sales plan and sales execution because they cannot live in different worlds. So we have to bring everything together.
Yeah.
When you're designing a compensation, you're directly impacting your customer experience. We didn't
Yes.
have that epiphany. It was like, okay, comps, it's like, okay, turnover and retention, how happy people are, and it was not part of the commercial strategy. And it should be. So, and data helped kind of tell the story, also kind of to tear down some myths
Yes.
that we had. Like, for example, well, compensation is self-funding or not? Are we using the right KPIs? Are we driving the kind of right behaviors? And we realized that we had an opportunity in understanding, we say, why we're hitting our sales numbers, but how that it looks from the revenue perspective. So that's where we shift in terms of KPIs, and now our teams are also accountable for certain parts of the P&L, like cash flow or like profitability. So now when they have to make a discount to a customer, they think it twice. So I think it helped us kind of elevate the organization also towards our goal of our financial kind of health. So, and that was all because of the data. And that's because we had a platform for 4 years that had all that data and consistency.
Yeah.
Right, consistency, yeah.
Right. One thing I've always loved about your talk, you mentioned this too, like the sales enablement piece, right? Like that, it
Yeah.
speaks. We're talking about alignment between all these different types of groups, but that really, when we see our roles as enablement and thinking about the holistic experience of the process, especially in compensation, when you think about the downstream effect, like we are driving people, what is that old phrase, the water will always find the lowest point or something like that. Like that's the same with our compensation. Like that's where people will focus their efforts is how we design our plans. Yeah.
No, I was just saying, talking about enablement, right? You think about sales enablement, but one of the things we've uncovered is the folks that we're dealing with in these local countries are dealing with compensation, but they do not understand how sales works. And so they're just doing
On the administrative side.
On the
Yeah,
administrative side,
Right.
yes, right. They're just sales manager comes and says, "I want to make this change," and they say, and they look at it from a functional standpoint. Can we make the change? That's all they care about. Yes, we can, so we do. And so we've paused them and had them start asking the question, well, why are you making this change? What are you trying to do? And why are you doing it in the middle of the quarter? Right? Does it have to be happen? Yes, go ahead.
Can I ask you about what you use for CRM?
Yeah, we're a Microsoft shop, so we have Dynamics. Yeah, and we have a platform that we've built ourselves called Xvantage that everything is plugging into now. So we have X for A for associates, we have for vendors, and it's all an integrated system. And down the road, all of Veracent will start tying into that same data. But we use Dynamics. Yeah.
So we use Salesforce, but we have some country with Dynamics too. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot with this one, but you guys have getting to know each other. This is the first time. No, I'm for both of you. This is for both of you. But when you hear each other's stories, is there something that you hear about it that you go, oh, I wish I would have done that, or I wish I would have thought differently about that piece? Is there anything that you take from one another, even in some of these conversations?
Well, I like the approach that Ingram had in kind of doing ICM as foundation and then kind of moving with the rest of capabilities. I think we have an opportunity there. And then I think that it's super cool to see how kind of different companies and different kind of lines of work, agriculture is a very specific kind of beast. But in the end, we have a lot of similarities, even in the approach.
Yeah. I would say I'm envious of the fact that you were able to get a top-down directive to sort of drive that we're going there, as opposed to we did a lot of selling, right? As we talked to the countries, because we didn't have that air cover, right? We knew we had it, but there was no memo from the CEO that said this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
So we had to build it from the ground up, which is fine, but it was a lot more work. I think there was extra work, I'll say, not more work, but it was extra work that I would have loved to have the advantage of saying, this is where we're going, but we'll do it at your pace and how, but it would have been nice to have that.
Well, but this is also a myth. It's like
Ooh,
when you have also, so
Paul is
yeah,
a mythbuster
I'm
here,
the
yeah.
mythbuster. In terms of when you also have something that is kind of more top down, you also have a lot of pushback and resistance because it's like, oh, you're telling me to do this. So we understood we needed this, but we just make the regions and the countries accountable for the change. It's like, okay, what you need. And then they were the ones kind of doing the change management. It was not the enterprise. Yeah. And this was very intentional, even in the conversations with the leadership team. But again, sometimes when you have a top-down, it's like they do it because they have to do it, but they are not buying it. Yeah, right. So that's another hurdle. So I love from your approach that you had a little more work at the beginning, but then it's like the buying is there and everything moves faster.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
This is quite literally my favorite part of bringing together these conversations, and I hope it becomes some of the favorite parts of your day as well, is finding one another and learning from the experiences of other people. So we do have this a pitch for the common time, not even a pitch for the sessions, but find these moments between sessions to talk to one another. You learn so much just from hearing about the experiences and the wins and the challenges that you have from one another, and I hope you'll take advantage of that piece of it today. So a big part as we kind of get to the payoff of all of this and start to get a little bit more into present day and look into future is thinking about, none of you described this as a quick fix. This is several years in the making, lots of effort and bloodshed and tears, and in the best ways, I'm sure is about right. But let's look at the business side of it. What has actually changed in the numbers, in the output, in the performance side of this, productivity, sales, whatever you can quantify? How have you seen outcomes? Terry, you can start maybe with this piece on your side.
Sure, yeah. So one of the metrics that we looked at, because we see it's kind of an example of the larger benefits that you can get from little things. So I would point to getting quotas to sales folks in a timely manner. So Ingram operates on a quarterly basis. So every quarter we're requoting, getting those numbers to the people. And when we started this process, that could take into month 2, the beginning of month 3, before a seller knew what their quota was, what they were trying to hit, what their targets were. And we knew that was unacceptable. So we did set sort of a governance to say, by workday 10 of month 1 of the quarter, we're sending out a letter with a quota to your sellers. And we made that very well known. We talked about it. We worked with sales managers. I won't say we're hitting 100% of workday 10, but we are definitely getting nearly 80% in month 1, which is a significant change. And it's a pain point for the sellers, right? And those are the people we always are thinking about when we're doing this, is how can we impact the sellers? Because they're the front line. They're the ones who drive the revenue, drive the success, the outcomes. So that's just a little thing, but it really has made a big difference. And it's something we actually are now reporting up to the CEO, that we brought that into the leadership team, and they said, yeah, we want to know how that's doing. And it's a small little thing, but we believe, and I think the numbers are starting to bear that out, that it's impacting the bottom line, right? The revenue that's coming in, the profitability that's coming in, because people know what their targets are.
Yeah.
Sooner in the month, they can start working towards them. Their goals are all aligned to that kind of stuff.
One of my favorite things that you said too. My mission since I started at Veracent is to say, how do we elevate the value and the strategic value and the perception of the incentive world? And so KPIs, data, those things, that's what the executive team cares about.
Right.
So the more that we sit at the middle of all of that, right? So the more we can elevate the strategic impact that we are helping to influence, the better it is for our teams.
Absolutely.
Paul, why don't you tell about the impact at Bayer?
So number one, I envy you, Terry, because we cannot get the targets in time. So this is something we're really working, and it's related to this kind of forecasting target kind of situation. But I think what we start thinking is much more collaboration between teams. Again, now everybody has skin in the game. We are seeing, so before we had kind of plans with multiple KPIs, we're kind of compensating for activities, which it's something we don't want to encourage. And now we're seeing adoption in almost every country in 3 KPIs that we have as kind of our, let's say, North Star, and it's cash flow, sales, and profitability. So we saw a shift of having like plans with 7 KPIs, random, each KPI with kind of a lightweight, like 5%, 10%, which doesn't drive any behavior, into these really strong 3 KPIs, kind of equally in weight. So we see a lot of adoption on that. We see countries reporting that cash flow has been kind of improved in those countries. We had conversations with South Africa, and we were saying, hey, because it's really hard to measure that KPI and say how you're feeling about it, and say, no, we want to keep it because it's really driving a change. So that was also an aha moment for us. And again, you need to ask me next year because we're going to have all the results in a month.
Unlock Live 2027.
So
We'll see.
It's a teaser. It's a trailer. So we're doing kind of conducting a qualitative and quantitative study for this major change we made last year. So we finished payouts last month. And now we're kind of going deep dive into that. So more to come.
Awesome. Terry, why don't you tell us a little about what 2026 and the future ahead looks like for you? What are the things on the horizon? What are areas you're focused on thinking about?
Yeah, so we've got a bunch of things, right? Obviously, we have 14 more countries to go. So we're working towards that. But for our mature countries who have been on the system for several quarters, if almost not a year or more, we're now starting to have those conversations around sales planning and design and territory design. So we now have the data to start telling them, okay, in extreme cases, we have 16 people getting paid on the same transaction. Is that a conscious decision, or is that just happening because you didn't see it before? And often that's the case. Oh, really? Which ones? Oh, I guess that's right. You start
Self-discovery.
Yes, again, we lead them back to it. Again,
Yeah.
no judgment, just do you know this is happening, and is it by design? So that's a big part of what 2026 will be, is engaging more on the sales planning side of things. We're really interested in getting sales managers into the manage environment in sales planning, right? We've been kind of keeping them arm's length. We want to start getting them more involved in the process and driving things from that direction. And then, the same as you were just talking about, we now have all this data, right? We have 14 countries of data. We'll have a couple of quarters. We can really start mining that data. What is it telling us, and what can we bring back to show value to the executive team, saying this is how we're aligning to the executive goals that you've set out, more profitability, better seller productivity, right? Those are the two main things that we talk about every day, right? How are we driving profitable business, and how are we driving sales productivity? Yeah. And we now have the tools and the data to start looking at that, and we can say, okay, let's start tweaking this, or this country's doing an amazing job with this. How can we leverage that across the globe, rather than they're just working in isolation and the other country has to find it by accident?
Yes.
Right, so on purpose versus by accident. That's what we're focused on,
Data is so important. I love that you mentioned storytelling of data, these kinds of things. It's also important, but I also think you have to recognize that perception is reality, and how people view things internally is really as important as any data point that you might bring to them, right? So talk to me a little bit if we back up from all of this and we think about the tone, the tenor of our conversation, and thinking about aligning and creating consistency and unification and harmony across functions. How has that changed the perception of the teams that you work with? And how are people coming to you differently now than maybe they were before?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when we first started the project, right, we had to do a lot of introduction as to who Global Sales Excellence was, what our mission was, and then what is Vericent and what's it designed to do. And so we did a lot of that. What's happening now, the countries we've been working with are proactively coming to us and say, we're thinking about making this change. What do you think? What would be the global standard for that? So that was not something that ever happened before. They would just do what they were going to do, and they wouldn't think about that. So we've changed the conversation. They're thinking about it, right? They're taking that pause and asking for input, which is amazing to us, right? We're really enjoying that. And we now have countries asking when can they get on Vericent, right? Because they've heard the success in the other countries, and now there's this groundswell. And we want to go as fast as we can, but we also want to make sure it's the right process. We don't want to circumvent our process that's been successful for speed. So you're almost slowing people down, but that's what's changed. People are coming to us more proactively for advice, information, or how soon can we get in the program, and how can we start leveraging it for our own success.
Awesome.
That's what's happening. Yeah.
Paula, same question to you.
So I think in our case was kind of pretty similar. So creating this excitement and proving value, I think, of the change we made from the design, and also from the data that we have from from performance. So I think that giving visibility of kind of what is really the compensation driving, being able to shape that with the regions, and the regions having this kind of, hey, we're thinking about this, we're thinking on making this change, how does it sound, and kind of revisiting comes as an evergreen. So it's not something you just kind of decide once and it has to be fixed, but it's something that needs to be agile and kind of responding to market dynamics, and this is how we see it today. So, and I think everybody now sees the value in that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we're getting close. We've got about 5 minutes left in the session. We do want to give a couple minutes for you all to ask questions, but in getting ahead a little bit of that, as I think about what I hope to happen after this, is that somebody in this room, or maybe many people in this room, will come up to you at some point in the hallways after this and say, I want that. Help me understand this aspect of it. It'll help me take a step forward. But if you step back from your own process and you were giving counsel and encouragement to someone in this room who might be thinking about trying to get to the state that you're in now, what's one thing that you would tell them? What's one of the most important parts of this that you'd want them to get right?
So be patient. I'm telling the sunny side of the story, but it has been it has been a hurdle. But I think it's alignment, stakeholder management, which is very important, co-creating with them, proving the value, using data. I think those are the things that are key for at least for our success. I think now people understand the value, so they're getting kind of asking more. So AI will play a very important role for us moving forward. And I think sellers want to be able to kind of simulate their compensation, simulate their targets and everything. So we're really looking forward into that moving forward. But I think that success, it's kind of all those components: stakeholder alignment, change management, data to prove the value.
Awesome. Yeah, Terry, same to you.
Yeah. A few things I would say. One, as you start out, as we keep talking about, you keep hearing data. Data is critical. So as you start, make sure you understand what data is available, where it's available from, and who can help you get it. Because that was something that takes a lot of discovery time. And I know, as you're talking about the sunny side of this, as we came out of the gate, that's where we tripped the most. That delayed us. Like, we thought we'd be up and running 3 months. It was 6 months, right? Because of data on our side. So line that duck up first and make sure you have a good stakeholder on the data side. You know where it is, where the data is. I can't stress that enough. It'll make your life a lot easier if the data is at least accessible. It may not be perfectly clean, all those kind of things, that's fine, but know where it is and how you can get it is important. The other thing on our side, we have an amazing team on the Global Sales Excellence side. We've got about 13 people on this team. It's pretty much the same team that started out. It started a little smaller, grew over time, but making sure those people understand the mission and can speak to it, so that when they're having conversations one-on-one with these country connections and stakeholders, they're consistent in what they're talking about. They have to drink the juice first before they engage with the others, because it makes such a difference when everybody's pulling in the same direction, and that can really help drive success. So I think, beyond the other last would be that collaboration, right? You work from a collaboration standpoint with who you're working with, whatever team, country, whatever it might be. I always like to operate from a mutually beneficial outlook. Right? How do we all win? Yeah. What does a win look for all of us? Okay, let's drive there. And you get a lot better buy-in and things go smoother. There'll be bumps in the road, but you can overcome them more easily if you're all working on it together, rather than it's thrown across the fence and say, you guys solve this and let us know when you have it done. You want them to be part of that process as you solve for those things that you come up.
It's the harder work, but it's the better work
Yeah.
at the end of it, for
Yeah.
sure. So that internal community is so important, that internal consistency. But I hope, again, just a play for helping build the relationships amongst you, the Verisant community, the community of individuals that you work across different industries and across different companies, but also maybe some similarities between them. I hope you're finding ways and times to connect with your peers and finding other ways to do that. So we are now, with the last couple minutes here, going to open it up. Anybody have any questions for Paul or for Terry? Yes, please.
All right. So first of all, Terry, Paula, as a digital consultant, I would love to work with the two of you. I think I'm really jealous of the fact that you came into a project with the attempt to get data requirements aligned, change management in place, all of this. I guess from a strategic perspective, it's kind of a two-part question. At what point did you begin to evaluate the technical options? And then moving forward, what's successful? Are you have an actual definition of success, or is it going to be something that's kind of on?
Sure, I'll try to answer that. I guess I'll work backwards. So from a success standpoint, it's not, it's a cliche, but I'll say it. It's a journey, not a destination, right? It's constantly evolving. As you mentioned earlier, the marketplace is always changing. Leadership expectations and goals are constantly changing. So you just have to constantly be looking at where you need to go next, right? We try to plan far out, but not too far out. So that we can be responsive and flexible to that. So, but overall success for us is well-compensated and appropriately compensated sellers and empowered sales managers and executives who understand what's happening with the business. Those are kind of the three benchmarks that we use when we make decisions, where we're making investments. If we have to choose, we have a list of, 45 things on our roadmap of enhancements we want to make, improvements we want to make, reports we want to update. We always evaluate through those things, who's it touching and what impact is it going to have. Those are the things that get prioritized, because you can't do everything. There's not enough time, money, or budget to do everything. So that's kind of how we do it. I don't remember the first question, I'm sorry.
So at what point did begin from a technology and evaluation standpoint, right? So it sounds like that you're taking more of a breadcrumb approach to your overall strategy. So at what point in time did the business begin to say, okay, well, this is what it is that we're looking for? What vendors or what platforms?
Yeah.
Was that early on,
Yeah.
or was that a little bit later?
It was.
And Terry, I'm hearing the plates clinking and the coffee flowing, and I'm realizing that's on me. So if quick answer to that, and then maybe we can follow that up in the hallway. It was a very big question, very good questions, but
So
we'll
I
be
can do it
mindful of the
super
next
quickly.
session.
So technology for us was there, but in general, in every project that we have today, kind of technology comes kind of very early in the discussion. Technology and data. So we have a mission as a company. We want to transform the way we're doing agriculture, and it's like the three of them needs to be at the same time: commercial strategy, behaviors, and technology and data. So these things needs to be together in the same room. So that's, and in case of incentives, technology was already there. Success for me will be eventually sellers understanding kind of the connection between the strategy of the company and their comp, not thinking just on the comp. So understanding kind of the overall importance of that, and being able to also understand that their compensation is kind of making them being better sellers and delivering a better customer experience. In the future, as a dream, I will love them to have in the table designing the compensation. So that will be my North Star.
But I think it's amazing that it's a business-related goal as opposed to someone saying, well, you have a technology goal. So it's the enablement of, which is very important.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's awesome. Well, thank you to you both for joining us. Will you join me in thanking Paula and Terry for presenting us today? Thank you. Feel free to connect with one another, grab some coffee and some pastries, and there's some other great sessions that are coming up here in just a few minutes. Thanks for being with us.